Are you listening? Damn.
Welcome to another edition of AFC North Talk here with Ace, Q, and Tony. You guys know we're going to have a good one. We already finished with the offense. We started with the defense. And as you know, we said you have to follow us on Twitter. Twitter, you decided. CB, it was the choice for today's show. So, hey, that's where we're going to start with. First of all, again, make sure you follow us on Twitter, because we're going to keep putting polls. There's currently a poll there for you guys to vote. And let me see if I can bring this one out. You didn't what, Tony?
I didn't retweet it. I forgot to retweet it. I mean, the Steelers weren't going to win this one.
I'm going to show you where the Steelers are. Let me show you this.
Are they bad? They're going to be bad.
No, they're not that bad. With 1%.
Yeah, that's Tony. Tony not doing his job. That's on me, Steeler fans. That's E1. That's
Tony and Steeler Nation 412.
Right here.
Those two votes
right here. No, I didn't even vote in it either.
I'm pretty sure it's Steeler Nation 412. It's just Tony.
My second account. I got my second monitor over here.
He has two laptops out.
Yeah. Anyway, remember these polls and during the season we're gonna do more. So make sure you follow us on Twitter as we are coming with new stuff as the season gets started. And this is the time, we're preparing. We're ranking. We are actually taking time for our ranks. Not like PFF. Oh wait. I'm not digressing. That's a whole can of worms. Ravens fan, I'm not gonna touch that today. Unless you want a super chat, which are available for questions or comments. Okay,
check that list out.
Man, they came out with the top 50, and then they come up with the quarterback one, and then I don't want to talk about that shit. They monetized. Look at that. Anyway, let's get it started. Ace, I'm gonna go with you. Who you have as your fourth?
Well, for me, when we look at these rooms and we look at just the talent in there, I do see in Pittsburgh, I do see Joe Hayden. However, he is older. I still think that he's still got something left in the tank. However, when you lose all of the guys, you talk about Mike Hilton, Steven Nelson, what was a strength for this team, and I think if you go back to the video last year, I thought that the Steelers had a very strong secondary, pretty underrated, obviously. But to lose those big pieces is why I have to put them at 4. For me, they didn't do enough in the offseason to really combat those losses, and they also are just right now looking for someone to come in and be across from Joe Hayden and really do an admirable job. And I just did the cut the tape on Mike Hilton last night, and that guy is a special corner. To see the impact that he had on that team last year, forcing fumbles, getting interceptions, coming off the blitz, like that's going to be something that will be missed there. So for me, it's really only the Steelers just because outside of Joe Hayden, they don't have anybody else that I have seen that I can definitively say will step up to kind of minimize the loss of a Steven Nelson, who is one of if we're going by PFF, which we just kind of ranked on them, he was one of the top corners on PFF, and then you also lost Mike Hilton, who's also considered one of the top slot corners. So to take those two losses and not really address it in the first 2 rounds in the draft for me was just the reason that I had to go with the Steelers here at 4.
Hey, Hilton was so good that he made our thumbnail. He made it into a thumbnail. Tony, I want to hear you react to what they said.
I'm not surprised. I mean, the Steelers, they didn't do enough. They didn't do anything. I mean, they literally didn't do anything in free agency or the draft at corner. I think it was one of the things that was kind of surprising when you looked back at April's draft. They didn't take a cornerback whatsoever. And obviously, Cam Sutton is back, and Cam Sutton, can he play the outside? Can he play inside? I think he can do both, but you can't do both at the same time, right? So they need someone to either play on the outside opposite Joe Hayden, or they need someone to come in the nickel, and they didn't get either of those guys. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch as we go, how they're going to address this, because they didn't bring in a free agent. They let go of Steven Nelson, which at the time seemed like a very strange move. although Steven Nelson is still available right now, has not signed anywhere. So you would have thought that a guy who, considered himself, a top corner in this league, and certainly when the Steelers cut him, there was just, myself included, mass confusion in Pittsburgh, that the rest of the NFL would have felt the same way. They have not to this point. So it's an interesting one. My number 4, though, is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I have the Bengals at number 4. The Bengals, like the Steelers, they're going through a big transition in the room, right? I mean, like, basically, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ace, but opening day, if they open in the nickel, there won't be a single player at corner that played on this team a year ago. Right? I mean, Trey Waynes obviously was on the roster, but, did not play a single snap last year. So, yeah, so they're going through a massive sea change here at the position. Obviously, they signed Trey Waynes last year to a huge deal. This is $14 million a year. It's a crazy deal even a year ago. And now, of course, you have the pec injury. He'll probably be fine coming off of that. I think the weird thing, though, is that, Trey Waynes he was coming off of a year in 2019 where he just wasn't very good. He had a 74% completion percentage against that year. Now, obviously, he's played better throughout his career. And so the Bengals are kind of, betting high here that, hey, that was a one-time bad year. He's going to go back to being the Trey Waynes that was projected when he came out of college a couple years back. And then, they got Awuzie this year. Awuzie, again, if you were buying Awuzie stock after his rookie year, again, I'm all in on that pick. But the problem is, we talk about Deontay roller coaster ride. Awuzie has been the same way. And last year, he's just coming off and I know he was on a very bad Dallas defense. And so maybe you could argue, hey, he had no support there, right? It wasn't like they had a great pass rush or great safety to help the cornerback room at all. But man, 124.5 passer rating against 16 yards per catch for Awuzie last year. I mean, he's got, by the way, Awuzie, and we talk about up and down, he's got a career pass rating against of 101. So, he's again, it's the Bengals are betting that they can get the best out of Awuzie, but then they're also betting they can get the best out of Trey Waynes. And that for me is the problem there, is that their outside corner situation, I just have huge question marks about both guys. And then you go inside to Mike Hilton. I'm not going to say it. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say a bad thing. I am upset that Mike Hilton went to Cincinnati, but I'm not going to say bad things about Mike Hilton, the player. I do think, though, that his success will be dictated by his usage. Remember we made the joke last year about this Bengals defense, the cover one all game type deal. I'll say this about Mike Hilton. If you're going to play him in that system, if you're going to play him as a straight man corner all the time, you're going to have a bad time. The nice thing about Mike Hilton is that he can do so much. Mike Tomlin used to refer to him as kind of an extra linebacker on the field in nickel because he's so good in run support, so good as a blitzer off the edge. And I think so good with his eyes on the ball. I don't want he's a short guy. He's undersized and he can get beat up in that way. But if you put him eyes on the ball, he's so instinctive, so good when the ball is in the air that you're right, Ace. You probably got a special player there. But it's gonna count on how the defensive coordinator there in Cincinnati uses him, because I think there are ways to put him in situations where he can be a very frustrating player to watch. The one guy in Cincinnati that I like a lot, and I almost considered putting them ahead of the Steelers because of this player, because of Darius Phillips. I won't even be shocked this year if Darius Phillips beats out either Trey Waynes or Awuzie. Now, it's going to be hard for Cincinnati to justify paying Trey Waynes the amount of money they are and then having him get beat up by Darius Phillips in camp. And the same thing can be said for Awuzie. But some of Phillips's advanced numbers are very, very good. 54% completion percentage against last year, 20% forced interception rate when targeted, and 2 dropped interceptions last year as well. And if you believe, like I do, that interceptions are cyclical, the fact that he's getting himself in those situations, I think bodes well for him. And he did that on a limited snap count last year at Phillips, I believe. So I like Phillips a lot. He almost was the reason why I put this room above the Steelers. But I guess my theory here is I don't trust the Bengals organization, the coaching staff, and the usage of this room to put them ahead of the Steelers.
You don't trust Lou? Q.
I'm not going to trust Lou.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, right? Because Pittsburgh, what they're rolling out there on paper, I mean, it doesn't look great because it's Joe Hayden, and Joe Hayden, 10 years after he got drafted? Well, no, 11 years, because he was in the 2010 draft, right? And we look at people in that 2010 draft as ancient. Like Cam Newton was the year after that, and we look at Cam completely old now. I can't even. Who was in that 2010 draft with Joe Hayden? It's a bunch of players who aren't in the league at this point anymore, right? But yeah. I think Darrelle Revis might have been in that class. No, he was in 07. But so there's that, right? the Steelers are in a position where, hey, Joe Hayden's looked fine. It's just at this point you have to ask, like, is he going to taper off? And then, they cut Steven Nelson. They don't really have a great solution for anything else outside of that. But I think I'm going to have to go with the Cincinnati Bengals here. My main reason for this is, one, football moves at light speed, right? And we really haven't seen a ton out of Trey. Well, we haven't seen anything out of Trey Waynes last year. And we hadn't seen that much out of Chidobe Awuzie, right? Awuzie since about 2019. That's the last time he really played a full season. He didn't have that many snaps last year. So, the numbers were also bad for Awuzie, but I'm going to give him the pass because, like, the whole secondary was, like, historically awful, and he just might have got a couple bad breaks where he got credited with some attempts that somebody else blew, or he had to pick up on something like that. So I'm not going to fully say that's all on him. He was a solid corner in 2019. It's just the last year he played, he didn't play a full season. Trey Waynes hasn't played a full season in quite a while, and we don't even know what Trey Waynes is still going to, like, when the Bengals signed him last year, we were still kind of wondering, what Trey Waynes are you getting? At what point in his career is he? He's already kind of tapering off, where it's with Joe Hayden. It's completely speculatory when we talk about it tapering off there. Now, they do have Mike Hilton. I do like Mike Hilton. Darius Phillips is somebody I do think, I agree with Tony, he can develop into somebody. I believe he's the guy who got that bad draw on that Donovan Peoples-Jones pass. I mean, it's just an excellent pass. He can really do much about it. He actually did good coverage. It's just better throw, better catch. That happens a lot. So he seems like he's going to be solid there. But I just have more faith that the Steelers are going to be able to use their parts in a more effective way schematically than the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be able to. And I really don't have much faith in the parts that the Bengals are pulling out there. I mean, you're talking about two guys who, combined, it didn't really play a full season of snap last year, because obviously Trey Waynes didn't play. And it's, even if they did play last year, even if they were healthy, there were still questions about those players. And, the inside is important. Your nickel is important, but it's not more important than the two guys that you have outside. If you have massive questions about those two, it really doesn't matter who's going to be inside, because teams are just going to exploit what you don't have outside. I mean, look at the perfect example is in the Mason Rudolph game versus the Browns, where it didn't matter who the Browns had the inside because they didn't have Denzel Ward and they had Robert Jackson out there. And as long as he was out on the field, Chase Claypool was getting the ball deep. Now, that game plan changed. I don't know why. Maybe Ben didn't like to do that. Who knows? It's a mystery on why the game plans change so much when they have more success. But I think that's the biggest thing there. The outside corner situation is such a huge question mark and such a unstable thing right now for the Cincinnati Bengals that I can't really justify putting them over the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, look, they've gotten worse than last year, but to be honest, when we saw them on the field last year, they didn't have big names. They didn't have dazzling superstars out there, but they played a solid season. So I would have to give it I have to give 4 to the Bengals.
Yeah, for me, I mean, this is a very hard one. I struggle with this one a lot. Both of these teams basically lost their best player last year, right? Their best corner from last year. And I understand why for the most part for Willie Jackson III. The Steelers one, I still don't understand that, but whatever. I'm not gonna digress on that topic. But a lot of the points that you guys brought, they're very well taken. I feel like the Bengals have a little bit more talent. The question is, can they put that talent together, right? To be in the right place. Trey Wayne, I agree. He's been a roller coaster in my opinion. He has some moments that you're like, this dude looks legit, and then he looks like this guy shouldn't be even playing this league, right? Hilton, I agree. If he's used well, he was really good on that slot side. And then Phillips, you can see a guy is developed. In the Steelers side, you have Sutton, right? Decent player. Hayden, we'll see. Hopefully for the Steelers, he doesn't take a step back because another year in the league, as we say, 11 year. And your boy Tony Pierre something, right?
James Pierre, don't get me started early. Don't get me started early. I got a whole segment prepared later. Don't get me started too early.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, I did talk about Zuzier's the 100 or 200 something snaps.
Yeah.
James Pierre is like 30.
20 coverage snaps last year. So
and
enough. It's enough to know. It's enough to know.
Awuzie is another guy that you can see some talent. So they have talented player. If all these players put it together, I can see them overtaking the Steelers for sure. But so right now, I think the Steelers. Yeah, I think the worst faith. You basically have a little bit more faith in the Steelers, but I can definitely see how the Bengals can be third and the Steelers can be fourth at the end of the year because the Steelers don't have that much talent. That's that much more talent, and then their best player is an older player that can definitely take a step back. And the other guys are meh guy, like they could be good, they could be bad. We'll see. But I can definitely see that the Bengals having a little bit more depth in that side and possibly overtaking the Steelers. Before we go to the next one, let's have the super chat. Thank you a lot, Mike T54. Remember, when we caught Hayden like 5 years ago because he had deteriorating skills, not that he have made a difference in those Browns team, but still. Yeah, I remember that. And I remember
they cut him because they wanted to be bad. It was specifically because he hadn't deteriorated yet that he got cut. You have to remember, those are the 1-15, 0-16 teams, and he got cut before the 1-15 year. Yeah, he specifically got cut because, man, Joe Hayden's still good. Didn't expect that.
No,
let's get to Pittsburgh.
It's so weird. Yeah, it is so weird to go back to that time because there was a lot of talk when he got cut. People were saying, oh, he's been injured back to, his hamstrings are dead. He can't run anymore. This guy's done. I mean, that was 4 years ago. I mean, and this guy, he's still playing at a high level. Yeah, it is funny to go back to that time and think about.
Is that they cut him 2 years after his best season. The questions popped up again. Narratives in football change like that, just year to year, really. But 2 years before, remember this is the year that he held Julio Jones statless, and I believe AJ Green statless in the same year. Like he was one of the best corner, if not the best corner in football 2 years ago. I think the Browns went 7-9 that year. I remember that. That's the one where I got in a fight with one of the dudes on my dorm floor because I was like, man, AJ Green, no stats all year. He did not like that.
The Browns really gave the Steelers a lifeline because, and as we'll talk about when I get to the Steelers on this list, the Steelers have been dire, absolutely dire as an organization at drafting and developing talent at the cornerback spot. And so being able to just get Joe Hayden off the street, especially at that point where it was right in training camp, you could just plug and play him into the system, was such a lifeline for a room in Pittsburgh that was, they were in desperate need of talent.
Yeah, well, what secondary? This is just a side note, but the Steelers really, what secondary had they drafted well?
What player have they drafted well?
Yeah, from the secondary side.
No, they're terrible.
We'll get to that.
They're as bad at quarterback development at times, and then as good as they are at wide receiver development.
Right.
It's
almost
things.
Like
it's
Kevin
like the
Colbert,
wide receivers are killing their confidence.
Yeah, right. Like they know what a good how a good wide receiver beats a corner, but they don't know why. Right? They don't know why what makes a good corner. They just know how a wide receiver beats a good corner. That's it. That's all they know. No, they're getting better though. We'll talk about that. I think at drafting and developing, Cam Sutton is the first. I'll talk about this when we talk about Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton is the first player that they will have drafted and developed to a starting player. Not Artie Burns, and I'm wearing, by the way, shout out to Artie. Shout out Artie.
He was a result of a Browns trade, right? You guys, the Landry Jones trade.
Shout out to Artie. Artie Burns was the last player that they drafted and started at corner. But not just because he was a first round pick, not because he was an actually, a starter worthy player. It is interesting though. I did want to, as long as we're talking about the Bengals here and this secondary room, I wanted to ask this to Ace, in a different world, right? If the Bengals could go back and not sign Trey Waynes to that deal to $14 million, right? Don't you think they would be better off today if they had used maybe that same money even to just get William Jackson back? Right?
I mean, that was when the Trey Waynes deal happened. I figured that was going to be William Jackson III's money. But knowing what I know behind the scenes, the Bengals coaching staff, Lou Anarumo in particular, who came from New York, his background is that he came from New York as a secondary coach. So he tends to feel like he's more of an expert in that area. And one of his complaints about William Jackson III was he didn't have the best ball skills, didn't get the ball in terms of interceptions. And when I heard this, I was kind of baffled by it, and it didn't help that the next game, William Jackson dropped a wide open interception during that next game. So his issue, from what I've heard, and I'll get into it when we get to the Bengals, it was more so they didn't like his ball skills.
Yeah,
in terms of him being able to get interceptions.
I got you.
Interesting.
Okay, so before we go to number 3, Tony, talk to our guys about our sponsor.
Of course, got to tell you guys about our friends over at Manscaped. You know, summer is coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right. The 4.0. Complement your summer bod with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. But you got to use the code AFC North Talk, all one word, AFC North Talk. It's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you're going to find not only that Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, but you're going to get the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver ball deodorant, the Crop Preserver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. First of all, this new Performance Package 4.0 includes that new Lawnmower 4.0. The trimmer is insane and, dare I say, the GOAT of all ball trimmers. Yes, I said it. Their 4th generation trimmer features cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. Thanks to their advanced skin safe technology, the Lawnmower 4.0 has 7,000 RPM motor and a new multifunction on-off switch to engage a travel lock and gives you the ability to turn on that 4,000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precision shave. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. And if you want to take your grooming game to an even further level, the Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up in your nose and ear. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof, uses 9,000 RPM motor powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. The nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes. And then you'll seal the deal with the Manscaped liquid formulations. Before heading outside, use the Crop Preserver ball deodorant to keep you on your game in the heat. Then, after trimming the lawn and whacking the weeds in the heat, give your beach balls a boost using the Crop Reviver. And they even threw in 2 gifts. They got the Manscaped boxers and the Shed travel bag. Bring your comfort and boxers to another level. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code AFC North Talk. All one word, AFC North Talk at manscaped.com.
Hey, shout out to Manscaped. Like I said, it's in the description below. Our sponsor, they have been great to us. So go check them out. Their products have been great too. So all of us have used Manscaped products and they are great. Okay, I'm gonna throw it back to Ace. Who's your number 3, man?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that my number 3 is the Cincinnati Bengals. And for me, it really just came down to like checking the depth chart between both teams. I kind of talked about that the Steelers have a lot of unknowns there. And when I look at it, when I see a guy like Arthur Millette, James Pierre, DeMarcus Acey, Steven Denmark, I've covered a lot of draft stuff. I don't know who those guys are, honestly. I know who Trey Waynes is. No, he's not a number 1 corner. I don't think that he should be a number 1 corner, but he's at least, I feel like, at his ceiling, a number 2 corner. And even at his floor, he's probably a number 2 corner because we have this stigma that everyone should be a Darrelle Revis, everyone should be a Jalen Ramsey. And the truth of the matter is, number 2 corners, it's hard to really have 2 top guys that are going to be able to stop your receivers, period. So I think at his peak, he's probably a low-end number 2 corner. And then you also talk about Darius Phillips. I think he's a number 2 corner. The thing with Darius Phillips is you have to worry about his durability. He's a small guy. He's extremely talented. His issue is health, staying healthy, being able to be there. And that was a key issue for the Bengals last season. That's why they didn't have Trey Waynes. That's why they didn't have Darius Phillips for some weeks, because it was health. And then you look at Chidobe Awuzie. Definitely had an up and down season, but I actually talked to, I believe it was a Cowboys fan. He's pretty notable on here. He covers a lot of film. Vach Lombardi, my bad. His name escaped me for a second. And Vach says that he gets a bad rap, but he's way better than a lot of people think that he really is. And I talked to another friend of mine that's a diehard Cowboys fan, and he was like, he's solid. He's just the definition of solid. So I honestly, if you were to ask me out of the two corners who would be the better one, I'd probably actually take Cheeto over Trey Waynes because Trey Waynes to me is more so like Drake Kirkpatrick, but he can tackle. Like
Yeah.
Drake Kirkpatrick would get beat here and there. You could expose Drake Kirkpatrick, but Drake Kirkpatrick's issue is he couldn't get any tackles. Trey Waynes is a good tackler. And so you got two number two guys there. Then you got Mike Hilton. And then you have some other guys who have had actual experience starting. And so that's what it really came down to me was really the experience. Because you talk about Trey Waynes, you talk about Cheeto, Darius Phillips, not so much. But the guy that I'm going to mention here, I'm not saying that he's good, but he's at least started. And compared to what we had last year, which was bums off of the street and guys that I didn't even know about, you at least have Eli Apple, who is trash, but he's at least been a starter at some point in this league. He's at least got some kind of experience here and there. And so when you look at that guy compared to guys that we had last season, which were college free agents, undrafted guys, Tony Browns of the world, to me, just looking at that, just from their experience and what these guys could be on other teams, number two corners and stuff like that. That's the only reason that I picked the Bengals. I think personally, Joe Hayden is probably, well, I'm not going to say probably, he is better than any of those guys. But with the age factor and the depth after him, that's the only reason that I went with the Bengals here. So it is a group. We talked about the scheme. The scheme, to me, with Lou, a lot of the reasons why you don't see Carlos Dunlap there, why you don't see William Jackson, from what I've heard with people close to Lou, is that they didn't fit his scheme. Lou actually wants these corners to, and it's crazy because he played cover 0 and cover 1, but he's looking for corners that can get interceptions because it's not that he wants to shut wide receivers down. He just wants to get his hands, like corners to get their hands on the ball and give the ball back to the offense. You know, he's not looking for guys to come out and essentially do a Los Angeles Rams kind of thing. And so we'll have to see. Like, the jury is obviously out on Lou, but the one thing that I keep telling people is you have to give coaches players that actually fit their scheme. And that's why you had Carlos Dunlap dropping back into coverage. That's not what Carlos Dunlap does. So we'll have to see if these new guys that they bring in, I think they are an upgrade to what we had last season, but you have to see if they fit this scheme and what they do. And the one that I'm most excited about, that most Bengals fans are excited about, is Mike Hilton. And I think that he's going to bring another dimension. Now, they did have last season, we lost two corners, so we did lose William Jackson III, which honestly sucks because I never wanted William Jackson III going. I think he's an underrated corner in this league. And then they also lost Mackenzie Alexander, who I thought was pretty good in the slot. And we're going to see this year if they actually upgraded that position with Mike Hilton. So that's why the Bengals are number 3 to me.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah, first of all, Ace, you brought up, the defensive coordinator there and his desire to want to have turnovers and interceptions in that secondary. Look, he's not wrong. You could go back to that 2020 or 2019 team, the team that the Steelers had with, without Ben Roethlisberger, and that team somehow managed their way to 8-8. And you could, if you just took everything else away from that team and just pointed to one stat, 38 turnovers that year was the reason why you were able to take Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges and everything that team had going on and push them to 8-8 and literally one game away from the playoffs. Turnovers are such a huge part of winning games in the National Football League, especially when you have a deficit of talent. If you're just, again, if you're getting the ball and you're giving your offenses extra chances, that's how you win football games. So I think it's a good strategy on his part. But you point to the Steelers and the depth that they have, and I look, no one can argue that the Steelers have a deep corner room this year, right? I mean, this was a very deep room a year ago. In fact, if you looked at this, when we did this last year, there were a lot of Steeler fans who wanted me to put the Steelers as number 1, above even the Baltimore Ravens. And I said, I will, die for the Steelers on this show, but I won't die for that on this show. That's a bridge too far. This year, look, I can't even put this team number 2 on. I mean, this team has lost talent, and they are betting on themselves to develop from within. Now, look, the Steelers, I'm going to put them here at 3. They're not a deep team, but the reason why I'm putting them above the Bengals is, again, I believe that their outside corner situation is going to be stable. Look, you've still got Joe Hayden. And I know we all say, look, he's 32 years old. And so, hey, it could end at any moment. I agree. But if you just look at the player that he was a season ago, I mean, this guy's still playing at a very high level. Snaps per target is top 10. Top 10 in snaps per reception. So they're not even targeting Joe Hayden at this point, right? He is still a guy who teams are not wanting to throw against. Sonny, you said Steven Nelson was their best corner last year. That was the true 2 years ago. Last year, Joe Hayden was by far the Steelers' best outside corner. Yeah. Look, 51% completion percentage against last year, 9 pass breakups, 15% forced interceptions per target. Next gen stats put Joe Hayden as the 10th best coverage defender in the league. Now, I don't even believe that. I mean, and that's thinking about all linebackers, all corners, all safeties, everyone who drops into coverage. Joe Hayden, 10th best player of that group. I appreciate Next Gen Stats for putting them there, even if I don't necessarily believe it myself. But I still think Joe Hayden is still playing like a number one in this league. Even if he's doing it a little bit more quietly, he is still the number one corner on a defense that was the best in the league last year, or one of the best in the league last year, and the best when it came to completion percentage above expectation. I mean, the Steelers had the lowest or highest, however you want to say, completion percentage above expectation of any secondary group in the league, and that was led by Hayden. Now we go to Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton's an interesting player because where is he going to even we start here? Where is Cam Sutton even going to play? Is he when they lost Mike Hilton? It was originally assumed, okay, Hayden on one side, Nelson on the other. Cam Sutton plays in the slot, which he's done a lot in the past, and that's it. Easy transition year over year. Well, then they cut Steven Nelson. Now the question is, do they want Cam Sutton on the outside or do they want him in the slot? It seems like they're going to want to play him on the outside. Here's some interesting numbers on Cam Sutton. First of all, PFF loves this kid. I mean, absolutely loves Cam Sutton. Now, Sutton was a guy who I remember seeing in training camp 3 or 4 years ago. And for anyone who's ever been to training camp, it's hard when young guys get on the team. You don't remember what number they are and who they are. Cam Sutton made it really easy. He wore these bright red shoes, which made it very easy for him to stand out at practice. And he stood out not only because of his shoes, but because of his play on the field. I thought he would beat out Artie Burns earlier. It's surprising to me that he hasn't gotten a starting role until this point in his career. But he had the third highest coverage grade in the entire division. He was the highest coverage grade from PFF of any player on the Steelers. And the other weird stat here with Cam Sutton, just a weird one I'll throw out. 0 penalties last year. Did not get called for a single penalty, which as a corner, we talk about pass interference, defensive holding, all that stuff. It's a good asset to have. As I said, he has inside-outside flexibility. So if the Steelers do find an outside corner that they like, well, then Cam Sutton can go inside in the nickel. And I think that might be what happens this year. He played primarily in dime last year. Cam Sutton did, but he was the outside corner depth behind Hayden and Nelson. I'm excited to get him to see him on the field and get him legitimate snaps because again, I think in the bits we've seen of him in the last 2 years, he's looked very, very good, looked like a player who should be starting. Happy to see him get that. And I do think he represents a sea change in Pittsburgh. He's finally a Steeler cornerback that they have drafted and developed. And now here we are in year 4 or 5, whatever it is for Cam Sutton. And he's actually going to be a starting outside corner for this team. But you'd have to go back to like Willie Gay the last time this happened in Pittsburgh. It has been a long time before they've actually drafted and developed talent like this. The last 3 starters this team had, Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton, all free agent signings. And that takes us to the third corner in this group, my boy, James Pierre. Now, I got to give some backstory on this. 2 years ago, I went to training camp. I saw a player named Duck Hodges. The first day of practice, my co-host and I, Chris, were saying, hey, let's do a little hot take on the show. And I threw out there, Duck had a great practice. What else? I don't know how many passes he threw, 10, 15 passes in the entire practice. Looked great. Looked like he was a legitimate quarterback. And again, people who have watched training camp film, you'll know, you get that third, fourth quarterback in there, and you're like, this kid, why is he even out here? Do not ever give him the ball. Duck didn't look like that. So I said on that show, Duck Hodges is going to make this team. He did. Not only did he make the team, he won 3 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Should have made the playoffs. Should have beat the Kansas City Chiefs that year, but that's a different story. Now, I want to fast forward to last season, because last season, I see this kid Justin Lane out there, and he plays a bunch of snaps in Week 17, kind of a meaningless game for the Steelers, but he got some reps in that game, also got some reps against Jacksonville. This kid can play. It was shocking, so I think a lot of Steeler fans, that he was getting reps over Justin Lane. Justin Lane, a 3rd-round pick 2 years ago. I think James Pierre I think the reason, if we're looking at why did the Steelers cut Steven Nelson, I think James Pierre is the answer why. James Pierre is the reason why this coaching staff believes enough that James Pierre can come in and start right away, that they feel like, hey, Steven Nelson can go, we can save that money here, and we may actually have a decent corner in Pierre. I'm excited to get him into the system. I think he is going to be the key to this secondary success. If he can become dependable as a starter on the outside in nickel and dime situations, this secondary will be just fine. But if they can't develop this talent, well, they're going to have a problem here as they need to figure out if Cam Sutton's going to play nickel, if they're going to have to develop someone else, because the guys behind him, Justin Lane, disappointment so far, won't be the answer in nickel either. And then you talk about Antoine Brooks, and Antoine Brooks might be the answer in nickel, but I always thought of him as more of kind of a linebacker type. And so, we talk about some of the quicker, shiftier wide receivers that he's going to have to go against. That may be a tough matchup. So excited to see James Pierre out there. Look out for my boy, James Pierre. Get on the hype train.
Oladihi.
No. This is not Oladihi. No. This is not Tuzar.
No. I'm saying Tuzar, Oladihi.
No.
The long list of Latrobe Hall of Famers on the Pittsburgh Steelers continues.
Nope.
This is recorded.
I'm putting him on the same. I'm putting him on. Look, everyone who followed me on Locked On Steelers know. I mean, I was a prophet when it came to Duck, and I'm going back. I'm Babe Ruthing it again. Prophet. One more time. James Pierre.
Pierre Beats or Pierre. Okay.
Pierre. Okay. Bookmark that, guys. Just bookmark it when he gets torched.
Oh, please do. Please do.
So anyway,
no. Here's how this normally works for the Steelers and the guys that covet like this. They'll talk about them. You'll hear a lot. You'll be like, all right, man, I want to see what they do this season. They just don't play. They just never get on the field. I've been waiting to see baby James Harrison, Ola Adihi for 2 years. He's not even on the Steelers.
No. Those were guys who looked good at camp and looked good at training camp and OTAs and stuff. James Pierre looked good on the field. By the way, James Pierre had a pass breakup in the playoff game. Okay, on defense that, by the way, didn't make any plays in the game. James Pierre maybe had the highlight of the game.
Game was that?
And also, second quarter, late first quarter, early second quarter. So the game was still it probably wasn't
way out of like it wasn't. That wasn't the game.
Listen, as soon as the ball kicked off in that game, the game was over. Now, one other thing I want to mention about James Pierre, forgot to mention this. Star of minicamp. And not a shocker to me whatsoever. I mean, not a shock to me whatsoever. Minicamp. 2 interceptions in minicamp, which again, James Pierre is just red. What? No, on Ben. On Ben, actually.
Because they retire numbers in Latrobe.
They don't. They may have to start. They may have to get back to that with my boy James. And if they would have kept Duck, same idea.
Oh my God, Duck. Okay, so quick super chat here, guys. Remember, super chats are a way for you to interact and derail or put a question or comment. Professor Chaos says, was wondering, will you guys do a ranking of the coaching staff, or have you already done it? I don't think we have a plan, but we
should though. I've seen multiple people bring this up, and it is interesting because we're ranking each of the positions. I mean, coaching is such a big factor, and when we talk about the Browns, the question is can you even put Stefanski on the list, or technically speaking, is what's his face there? God, I'm gonna forget his name. The special teams coach, is he actually the? No. The Browns guy who coached, because technically speaking, Kevin Stefanski has not won a playoff game yet. When you really think, when you really boil it down, Kevin Stefanski is actually winless in playoff games so far throughout his career.
When you boil it down, Ben Roethlisberger has never beaten the Browns in a playoff game.
That is also true. This is also true. So I don't know. Where we put Stefanski 3 and then the special teams coordinator 4, or the special teams coordinator 4, because the coordinator's won a playoff game and Stefanski hasn't, right? So it's regular season success versus playoff success. What matters more?
Damn. Okay. I mean, we might.
Anyway, I don't want to derail this. We could talk about that.
There's only one coach on this show that hasn't been talked about being fired. Okay, it is not Mike Tomlin. It's not Zach Taylor. It's not even Harbaugh.
It's not even Harbaugh.
Harbaugh's been talking about getting fired.
Yeah, for 3 years.
But hold on. Should they consider making Stefanski step aside so that the special teams coordinator could take over? I mean, listen,
no,
they didn't. Listen, were they up 28-0 against the Chiefs? I don't think they were. I'm just saying he didn't have them ready to go in that game. Whereas,
there were no left tackles.
Just saying.
Okay, Q, give me your third, man.
Well, I pretty much already kind of went into this when I talked about the Bengals. The Steelers are going to be 3 just because I feel like I know what that group puts out there, and they've put out we're projecting that Joe Hayden could fall off of cliff. We're projecting that Cam Sutton's not going to be able to fill the role. But what we've seen out of Cam Sutton, what we've seen out of Joe Hayden, it's been solid work. So you have to put that over the Bengals, who I just don't trust that outside situation. Now they might get it together, they might not. Who knows? But I don't trust that outside situation. If they do cover one again with that outside situation, like again, it's going to be kind of weird. But the Steelers here, you kind of know what they have here. It's been a solid group. You know what I mean? As much as they haven't really drafted well or really signed well, it's kind of remarkable how this hasn't been one of those kind of disaster group areas for the team. But, it hasn't really been that bad. So, yeah, Steelers are going to be 3 here. I kind of expanded on it when I went on number 4, so I don't really feel like there's much else to say. Hey, look, maybe James Pierre might be the first guy to graduate from the Latrobe Hall of Fame to actually getting meaningful snaps in Heinz Field. But, I'll believe that when I see it because, he had 30 snaps. I believe that's 3 drives? Well, no, 20. That's probably what. 20 snaps. That's 20 1 or 2 drives. Snaps. And one of those drives were against the Browns, and the Browns could go 20 snaps in 1 drive, and it's all runs. So I don't even know how many pass snaps.
So it's 20
those
are
snaps. Drop back cat. Okay.
Yeah, 20 coverage snaps. Yeah, 20.
So that's a game. That's a game. That's a game.
Solid game
against a run heavy team.
Solid game.
I believe he had the number 1 PFF coverage grade in the division. James Pierre did.
Did he barely?
How does he qualify with?
He doesn't qualify. But if you remove all qualifications, these silly snap counts. We got 20 snaps. That's enough.
It's not even a full game. No, the quarterback's only going to throw 30 times. He didn't even play a full game.
We got 2/3. Right. 2/3.
Tony, don't talk me out of putting you guys at 3.
First 3 quarters, he looks fantastic. You think he's going to fall apart in the 4th?
He might. It would not be new. But
Steelers 4th quarter defense has been their bread and butter.
Yeah, it was so great. Their 4th quarter of the season play as a team though wasn't great.
Well, they had some injuries, but yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll put them 3 here. Now look, the Bengals could ultimately be the one that jumps them because they do have more potential. But, the Steelers just right now, there's no reason for them to be 4. 3 sounds about right for them.
Yeah, I agree here with Q. I mean, yeah, and I also went into it a little bit in my ranking of Cincy at 4th. I can definitely see Cincy at I think I said this by a couple positions, but this is one also that Cincy can definitely overtake the Steelers. But the Steelers right now, I think a 3rd, you trust them a little bit more. I'm sorry, the whole Pierre 30 snaps. I mean, that counts as much. Okay, 20. That counts as much as a rookie, basically.
But you gotta trust them.
Yeah. Look,
you gotta believe your eyes.
But I do think, and I'm surprised how Hayden hasn't dropped more because I remember when he got cut from the Browns, and I remember as a Ravens fan back then, we needed a second corner, and we were like, oh my god. Let's bring it here. And remember also reading the Steelers got him and being pissed about it.
Yeah.
But I was like, maybe he's there for a year or 2. Back then you had Artie Burns, right? Back then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, they had Artie Burns. He's trash. So it's just one corner and dude's still going strong. I would say tip of my hat to him for, 11 years. Just man, that's crazy.
And what's the most hilarious part about the whole Joe Hayden situation? It is literally because Joe Hayden loved his time in Cleveland is the reason he's in Pittsburgh. Not out of spite, just he didn't want to sell his house. So, and the closest team to Cleveland is Pittsburgh. And that's the only way he was able to keep his house. Yeah, Pittsburgh and Cleveland only like an hour and a half away. So
no, but he still has his house?
He probably still does, or he might have sold it eventually, but he got cut suddenly. He just had restructured his deal right before he got cut. He had no idea he was going to be cut.
Yep.
And then they cut him. And then, he was like, well,
I think
kids still live there. So,
yeah, I think Steelers are a good, a 3rd, just for a narrow margin. Okay, so we're going to
one other thing I do want to say about the Steelers real quick is that this, like you guys, this is my worry about the team. If there's a worry I have about the Steeler defense, it is this group in particular, because obviously, if Hayden does fall off this year, even if Sutton is good, right? If I'm wrong and they're wrong about any of that young talent behind them, I mean, this group goes to 4 and easily. I mean, and this goes back, and it goes back to what they were pre Joe Hayden, which is a Steeler team that can't develop young talent and doesn't, just doesn't have enough in that group. And this, you go back to what this defense was, pre 2019, which was, they get after the quarterback, but they couldn't cover anybody. So it didn't matter, right? They led the league in sacks, and yet teams were able to throw all over them. And they could very easily kind of slip back into that. If they've evaluated this room wrong, then they easily slip back into that. And this defense goes from being top 3, top 5 to, maybe top 15, top 20 again.
Another guy that I wanted to mention, I didn't know whether to throw him into the safeties or the corners because they claim that they're going to use him at both. But Ricardo Allen is another guy that the Bengals picked up from Atlanta who's expected to be a backup safety and I think the nickel corner as well. So I didn't want to really put him in this because I don't know exactly what his role is going to be.
Yeah. Is he Bengals
fans are probably going to jump in the comments like you didn't even talk about Ricardo Allen. But at this point, I don't know. They've said that he could play some corner, but I don't know if he's going to play safety as a backup or corner as well.
And someone in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe his claim to fame is he had the pick 6 on Brady in that Super Bowl, didn't he? For Atlanta? Was that him? I believe that was him.
May have been him.
Yeah.
They would have won that game. We would have remembered him. But,
that's right. Exactly.
They lost the game. So the Julio Jones's catch, whatever he did, boom, booted out of existence. The TVA just bombed it, bro.
And not enough, I know like everyone rags on, Matt Ryan and that, Kyle Shanahan for not running out the clock, but like that defense gassed. They gassed so hard, and they couldn't get one stop in the second. It's one thing where just run some clock, but they should run the ball. I agree, but you can't get one stop. Just get one stop. One stop is all they need. They couldn't get one.
Well, I mean, Ace though, we know from prior playoff games that sometimes just running the ball that can backfire too.
That's true, but when you had Tevin Coleman and Devonta, you gotta run the ball.
Like, it's one thing if
you had like no run game, then I could kind of go with it, but they kind of went Mike Martz there at the end.
They did.
They lost their mind. Like, it's Atlanta at the end of the day. Like, this is kind of what they do. Like, this is their franchise. Like, they have blew. This wasn't even new to Atlanta fans when they blew that lead. This is just the biggest stage they've done it in. They have blown like 20 plus leads like 6 times in franchise history. And I think it's only been done like 12 in NFL history. They like own like a like this is just what they do. It's just torture.
That's rough.
It's amazing, by the way, thinking back on that game, like how early we all knew that, they're actually going to blow this lead. It was like, I remember thinking that like at the beginning of the fourth quarter, like they're not going to hold this lead. This is good. This is over.
I remember in overtime, I saw Tom Brady make a throw from one hash to the opposite numbers, like running. And I was like, he's 48 years old. How did he make that throw? The Falcons are done. They're done. If he's making that throw in overtime at 48 years at the Super Bowl, like the tiredest you could be, what are you gonna do at that point? Like I was like, come on.
Dude, the only thing I remember about that game was Matty Ice dropping back. All you had to do is not take a sack. You could have run a neat play. Yeah, and he got back to back, and he takes him out of field goal range. A field goal would have just iced the game. Takes him out of field goal range. Tom Brady drives it down. And the rest is history.
Didn't he have a sack fumble in that game late too?
Yeah.
It was a bad one. I remember I went to sleep because the game was such a blowout for most of it, and I woke up, and that's when the comeback started. And I was like, "Oh, cool! I TiVoed this in real life."
Okay, so let's go with the top 2 teams. Ace, who do you have at number 2?
Number 2, this one, if it wasn't the definitive guys that they're bringing back, I think in terms of my number 1 team, I got to go with the Cleveland Browns here. But I think that the Cleveland Browns do have a real chance of moving up. But for me, it's the Cleveland Browns here. And really, Denzel Ward is one of the top corners in the league, right? If the other team didn't have another top corner as well, then I think I would probably go with Cleveland here. But then they also went out and grabbed a corner in the first round. And Greg Newsome, who I really like. They also have Greedy Williams, who I like as well. And one of the old Bengals, Troy Hill. I'm still mad that the Bengals cut him. I remember him from way back in the day. Couldn't believe that the Bengals cut him. He spent some time with the Rams. Now he returns to the AFC North. He always was a solid player. I believe he might have been undrafted, if I'm not mistaken. But Troy Hill is another strong signing there. That room is strong. And the only reason that I can't give them the tip to the other team is just because those guys have some guys with more accolades, I guess I would say. than the Cleveland Browns room. But I do think that the potential is extremely high, especially with you having Denzel Ward, who's a guy that's going to shut down your number one receiver, top 5, top 10 corner in my book easily. And then if you get a guy across from him that's a young guy that you got in the first round, that could be a great tandem for Cleveland for a while to come. And then you got Troy Hill, who's I think he still should be somewhat young. So when you have those three, generally in the NFL, you need to have 3 good corners because a lot of these teams are loading up at wide receivers. My team included Dallas's and stuff like that. So you got to have 3 guys that can be there. And I think that they're in good shape to have 3 young guys that can definitely defend other teams, especially when you get in shootouts with the Chiefs and stuff like that. So for that reason, I'm going to put the Browns at number 2, but they could ascend, but it's hard for me to put them over my number 1.
Tony.
Yeah, same here. Browns are 2. AC, you said that, and I got to thinking, could I make any arguments for Browns over Ravens? I do have some problems with the Ravens room, which I'll get to when we get to 1. But yeah, I mean, obviously for me, it's hard. It's even harder because I don't, obviously Greg Newsome being a rookie coming in, I don't take rookies into account, so it's easy for me to put the Browns at 2. But I think when we get to the Ravens, I think it's not like it was where this room is just solid top to bottom. I think there are legitimate question marks, especially at nickel there. But with the Browns, just speaking with the Browns, you talk about Denzel Ward. I mean, this kid is incredible. And by the way, I didn't even realize this today. He's 24 years old. And he's just getting started. A career 51% completion percentage, you guys. I mean, it's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. And, what this new room really needed to do is they needed to solidify some spots, right? Obviously, you need to get a corner out opposite Denzel Ward. They're hoping to do that with Newsome, but you just want to get solidified in the nickel too, because while you look, MJ Stewart can be fine at times. I mean, this team had so many problems when it came to injuries too last year in this group that you just want to have a deep group so that can't happen to you again. And that's what they did when they brought in Troy Hill. They're hoping, I think, everyone, and I'm certainly hoping that Greedy Williams comes back because I really like Greedy and I thought he could be a good player, even if he is a Cleveland Brown. So this is a good, I think top to bottom, what they've built here is a group that is it as deep as you'd like, considering that, Denzel Ward has had, he hasn't played 16 games in his entire career just yet. And Greedy, spent a ton of time on the injured list so far. It's not as deep maybe as you'd like because, I don't know, this sounds weird to say they don't have a 4th outside corner. If Newsome and Greedy go down, or if Ward and Greedy go down again, okay, well then who's your other guy? But every team's going to have that problem, right? I think beyond that, Quincy, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Steeler fans will know the name Brian Allen would be the next guy off the bench. So anyway, I digress here. The Browns are the number 2 unit in the room. They got one of the best corners in the division, right there with Marlon Humphrey, and then they've rounded out this room really solidly with good players.
Okay. Before I go to Q, don't forget, hit that like button. We have over 300 people, only 70 likes, so make sure you hit that like real quick. Also, you can put your rankings in the chat, or if you're watching the replay, under the comment section below. Q, we have a number 2.
Yeah, I got the Browns here at number 2. Because one, when you just compare the outside situations, them and the Ravens, I think the Ravens have a more proven and a more consistent 2 corners than the Browns do for their outside situation. I'm not saying the Browns situation is bad. It's just Denzel Ward. Hey, he's great when he's out there. It's just, he has to get out there. And last year, he didn't really have the same injury problems that he did in years previous. It's just he missed games because of the protocol from last season. Okay. So hopefully with that not being a problem, he will be able to finally play a full year, but he has not played a full year. So, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt in that situation. At the other corner situation, you got Greedy Williams and you got Greg Newsome battling it out. Look, I've said it before. I'll keep saying it. Whoever wins that battle, you feel good about, right? Either a 2nd round pick who's supposed to be a 1st round pick takes it, or your 1st round pick from this year takes it. Either way, you're in a good spot. And if Greedy takes it and Greg Newsome's ready, then Greedy becomes a very attractive trade piece to kind of try to throw in there and maybe do something for the future or get another piece if you need one. Let's say like a Jadeveon doesn't work out and you need another edge during the course of the year, you might be able to swindle that for that. So either way, I think that competition is going to be good. If it doesn't work out, Troy Hill has been a number 2 corner before. He can easily slide back into that role there. If not, he can play the nickel where he was one of the best nickel corners in football. It is a very complete room. if everybody stays healthy, right? And if everything goes to some kind of spec of a plan, right? 2 corners outside. You got a really good one. You have a young guy on the other side. You have a really good slot corner, and you have some decent depth. MJ Stewart played really good at the end of last year. Well, for like a couple of games, specifically against the Steelers. He had a couple of good games there at the slot. Now, he's not going to be somebody you want to start there. He's mainly going to be a special teams guy. But again, if you have to move things around, that'd be interesting. The thing that I want to watch this year, and the thing I think is going to be most important, is Denzel Ward, though. I think Denzel Ward is in a position to have a breakout type of season because this is the first year where you feel like he has support in that secondary. This is the first year where if you want Denzel to follow and play inside and out, which he's capable of, you have the flexibility in your roster to be able to do that, because now, if you need Denzel to go inside, you could just kick Troy Hill out and just keep Greedy or Greg Newsome on the outside. And that way you could let Denzel follow somebody around, really take away a number one corner, something that he's not been able to do. He's always playing the right side of a deep zone in the Browns defense because that's just what they need him to do in this defense. So now he finally gets that flexibility. Now he finally gets to be a true number one, and I'm interested to see how he does with that. Either way, it would be pretty hard to me to imagine that the defensive backs, now the secondary as a whole might be a different story, but just the defensive backs are better than the Ravens even at the end of the year. I think they are a really good group Baltimore has, and we'll talk about that in a second. But nonetheless, I think they're a clear number 2 for this conversation. I think they're pretty solid here.
Okay, so shout out to Jeremy. Thank you for the donation. Q, should Greedy beat Newsom out? If not, is he traded before the season starts? Shout out to all you fellas. Great content. I appreciate it.
Well, you got flexibility with that, right? Because Greedy was drafted a year after 2019, right? So he has 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 still on his contract, 4-year contract for a second-round pick. And you could have control over him with a franchise tag, but that would drive down his trade value. Either way, right? If Greedy wins out the job and he's just better than Newsom this year, you can play that out the whole season and then just trade Greedy in the offseason to clear up that space for Newsom. And if you want to get Newsom on the field right now because you think he's ready, he has more potential than Greedy, then you can just trade Greedy at the trade deadline and you get extra value because somebody be getting a season and a half of control of Greedy. Now, this is kind of an NBA conversation, but it's the kind of surplus there. And the reason why I would say you would do this is because specifically, I don't think Greg or Greedy are going to be versatile enough to take snaps inside or really see the field that much if they're not going to be the starting opposite boundary corner. So I think if they both look good, one has to go. Obviously, it's probably going to be Greedy if that happens. And, Greedy's trade value, if he plays well, it's going to be tremendous because he's a guy who had all the potential in the world coming out of LSU. It's just you don't really have space for him. It's one of those situations. So, yeah, Greedy's going to have good trade value, and you have a lot of flexibility. That could turn into picks. That could turn into another player. You could get traded during the draft next year. You could do a lot with that. Just don't give them to Pittsburgh because we've already given them their best corner in like the last 21 years.
If you want to give the Steelers another, the future Joe Hayden, I'm totally down with that. No, I do think though, when you talk about this room, it does remind me a little bit of the way the Steelers and Steeler fans were talking about their cornerback room a year ago, right? Where a lot of Steeler fans were saying, hey, what are we gonna do with Cam Sutton? Like, is he gonna just come off the bench all the time? Like this kid, should they trade him or whatnot? No. And I think, Browns fans just look no further than the Baltimore Ravens for a team that, you cannot have enough good corners. Cornerback is such a big part of defense in the modern NFL. When we talk about this passing league, you got to have solid play at your cornerback. So you got a corner on the bench who you think maybe could be a starter. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And obviously you got to make that work in the locker room. Obviously you don't want players who feel like, hey, I should be out there and they're disgruntled all the time. But if you can make the coaching part of that work, boy, having too many players, you can't have too many good players at corner.
Yep, I was gonna say the same thing. Thank you for bringing that up, Tony. Because I was gonna say, I'm assuming he's a Browns fan. Look, Denzel Ward, one of the things that he has had through his career, he misses a game here or there. Well, I think.
And then you got Greedy. So.
Look, let's be honest. I
And he
think.
can get injured while Denzel gets
Yeah, Greedy.
injured.
We can't use the injury thing with Greedy because Greedy's more likely to get hurt than Denzel.
Well, here's what we're saying. At least hopefully you could time it up.
Exactly. If they time it right, yeah.
But my other point was going to be, I think, to be fair, the Browns right now think of themselves, and I will agree with this. They're a Super Bowl caliber team, right? So if you're a Super Bowl caliber team, you're competing for the championship. You need that depth, right? In that corner, you cannot have enough corners. You cannot, and especially when some of those corners have throughout the years got injured, right? So I would say even if Newsom beats him out. Because Newsom no, it wasn't Newsom. It was the other kid. Sorry.
Newsom, I believe, did get injured in college.
He had some nicked up injury issues. They weren't serious. Like the only year he missed was his freshman year, but it's because he was redshirt. It kind of counted, and he played at the end. It's like a weird situation, he explained, where he had missed 2 games early because he was injured. Then they held him off because he was they wanted to redshirt him, but then they had to burn him in a bowl game. So it ended up looking like he was hurt for like the whole year, but he was only hurt for he had like a rolled ankle or something like that.
My point is, if you have 4 good corners, that's only to your benefit. 2 players of that, Denzel Ward and Greedy, they have injuries in the past on a 17-game season plus the playoffs, right? I think even if Greedy gets beat, you put him there, you say, dude, right now your value is not going to be huge because right, you're coming from injuries. Let's get you in. You're gonna be in a Super Bowl caliber team, right? We're playing for a championship. We're playing for playoff. That's gonna look good in your resume. Stay healthy. Let's work it out, and you can rotate him in, right? So,
I mean, worst case scenario, you could just have him on your roster for 2 years.
Yeah. I would say this: at worst, this year he should not leave. Even if he gets beat, should not leave him for depth. Okay, and then for me, number 2 also is the Browns. I concur with most of what you guys said. I love. Look, I don't want to praise the Browns too much, but I think what the Browns have done in the past couple of years have been genius. They had a lack on offensive line 2 years ago. Boom, fix it. This year, before offseason started, if we said, what are the Browns lacking? Well, it would have been defense, right? And on top of defense, where you want, well, secondary was a big part of it, right? They upgraded safety. There's not a safety video today. And they upgraded in corner, right? They drafted one. They got what I think is going to be their slot corner. Boom. Instantly, 2 potential starters plus the starter and safety. The Browns GM, the front office have done a phenomenal job putting just the talent, right? We'll see how that talent gets, but the talent is there. So I love what the Browns did. Again, I just don't want to give them too much credit, but it has been. If you're a team that is rebuilding, just look at the Browns, what they did in the past couple of years. That's how you do it. They approach it right. They drafted well, and they said, we still have cap. Let's strategically sign these guys. They'll look to be a fit in our team and then move forward. These players, they play great in the teams that coming from. Right? The college players play good in the college. And Hill, when he played with the Rams, he was good too, right? So I think they have good players. And again, going back to question, they should not trade Greedy even if he gets beat because you will need that depth. And if you keep that depth, the hope is if one of those guys gets injured, you have the other guy. Could it happen they all get injured at the same time? Yes, that happened to Baltimore. But it happened to Baltimore against the Steelers, to be more accurate. But, you know, at least if you have the depth, you have a less of a chance for that to happen. Okay, now number 1. I'm happy. Now I'm happy. Ace, give me your number 1.
I mean, it's no coincidence that I'm wearing this shirt today because there's going to be a lot of teams that I'm excited to face. Definitely the Steelers. I think the Browns will give us a nice run. I'm really excited to see these 3 receivers go against the test. And when Jamar Chase got asked this question, he was like, which team do you want to play first? He said the Ravens. And that's because obviously the Ravens have probably the best corner room in football, let alone the AFC North. You talk about Marlon Humphrey. Obviously, I was wrong about him coming out. I just thought, with us having Drake Kirkpatrick and being burnt with all of the Alabama corners that came out and were busts, I was expecting him to be the same thing. But this guy is a master not only on the outside, he can also move into the inside and shut guys down completely. And then you talk about Marcus Peters. Yes, he takes risks, but most of the time he's getting a reward, and that reward is picking off your quarterback, possibly taking it for a touchdown. I've always been a big fan of Marcus Peters, even before he was in Baltimore. Loved him when he was in Kansas City. A lot of people talk about the nickel position, but Tavion Young is solid. The only thing is, can he stay healthy? That's always been his issue. He's a smaller guy. I believe I remember him like from a couple of years ago when he played. He was one of the top nickels in the league, and that's what really gives them an advantage. But really, it also comes with Jimmy Smith as well as your fourth corner, who could probably be a second corner. I know someone talked about him shutting down Travis Kelce. That may have happened. I'm not sure if it did or not, but that just speaks to what he's capable of. Now, he is older as well. I think he's kind of in that Joe Hayden conversation in terms of age. He is slightly older. But when you look at the all-pro corner that they have, which, it's a toss-up between Denzel Ward and Marlon Humphrey. It kind of probably depends what you want. I probably would give Marlon the edge just because he's shown that he can play at an elite level inside and outside. It's probably the only edge that I'm giving him there. And then you got Marcus Peters, who, is a Pro Bowl corner. I don't know if he's made the All-Pro team. I doubt that he has, but he's at least Pro Bowl caliber. He's a top guy, and they have the top tandem probably in the NFL right now. Unless you want to look at the Los Angeles Rams, you could probably say them as well. But they're up there. And so it's easily, for me, the Baltimore Ravens are number one.
Tony, before you go, you made a comment that Denzel Ward was 24, right?
Yeah.
That's the age of Marlon Humphrey.
We're gonna get to Marlon Humphrey and the absolute freak that he is.
Before we go with Tony, Joshua Mater, sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Charles, do you think for the nation, us Bengals fans will be in hibernation until safety? Right?
That is facts. That's why I was like, where's safety at? We're just okay.
Well, we'll see.
That was
Safety's
my bad.
Gonna be just like
gonna be an interesting.
It's gonna be just like it was last year. It's gonna be an absolute show.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But Tony, who's talk about your number one team? Sorry.
My number one. Oh, let me tell you about some of my favorite corners on the number one team. Of course, the Baltimore Ravens. Who can forget, Steeler fans, about our favorite player, Terrell Bonds? Terrell Bonds was just an absolute.
In the league anymore.
I mean, Bonds. Listen, I might get a Terrell Bonds jersey and hang it up back here behind all my Steeler memorabilia.
That was the reason.
Listen,
picking on this guy.
Listen, I have a over there on my hat shelf there thing. I have a chef's hat because of Terrell Bonds. He was an absolute asset.
No, Terrell Bonds was a guy that we brought from the practice squad because he had decimated injuries. And I mean, to the credit of the Steelers, they kept looking, where's Bond? And they kept throwing.
Well, let's not forget about Pierre Desir too, who was also just an absolute fantastic player for Baltimore.
Another guy was for like a game.
Tremont Williams is also one of those randoms that they just brought in to play slot.
Just so much. I mean, really, just when you think about how much talent Baltimore has, it's just overflowing last year with talent. No, look, obviously this is the number one unit because of Marlon Humphrey. Now, the interesting thing about Marlon Humphrey is that he played like 55% slot. I mean, we're talking about one of the, if not the best. I mean, Jair Alexander, probably the best pure corner in the league. But Marlon Humphrey, you can make an argument, is even better because Marlon Humphrey played 55% in the slot last year. When he could play outside just as good as anybody in the league. That kind of versatility.
He prefers outside.
Of course. I mean, outside's where you make your money. I mean, Mike Hilton, Troy Hill, right? I mean, they got paid, but they didn't get paid like the top corners get paid. They got paid like, a middle tier corner get paid, and they're starting nickels in this league. And Marlon Humphrey can do both. And it's funny. I was listening to an interview with a future Hall of Famer during minicamp. It was James Pierre. James Pierre was asked about playing inside or outside during minicamp. Just the difference, the intricacies, right? Intricacies of what's the difference about playing inside versus outside. And he said, I don't do that stuff. I play corner. That was his answer. I play corner. And that is Marlon, but that is legitimately, Marlon Humphrey's Like his method, he plays corner, inside, outside. The intricacies are playing inside. Doesn't matter. Marlon Humphrey, that's what makes Marlon Humphrey so good to me, is that he can do both and do both at what looks to be so far a legitimate future Hall of Fame level. And then you have Marcus Peters, there as well. And we talk about Joe Hayden and like, hey, Joe Hayden should probably be, he should probably be falling off about now. I mean, Jimmy Smith should probably be falling off about now, because Jimmy Smith, not only is he just about as old as Joe Hayden, but Jimmy Smith has had, injuries every freaking year, injury, and he just comes back from it.
All them injuries early.
Well, but Hayden, to his credit, has actually stayed healthy to this point in his career. Whereas, again, it just felt like, it was year after year of injury after injury for Jimmy Smith, and yet puts together another fantastic season. Now, Tavon Young, look. Can we even consider Tavon? This is my problem with the room. Is okay. You got those three guys, and you're solid. You're not going to go. Jimmy Smith, maybe he falls off, but otherwise, you are solid if Marlon has to play nickel. But you really want it to be Tavon Young. The problem is we haven't seen Tavon Young in 2 years. He played 20 snaps last year. He had James Pierre level of snaps last year.
He played 0, if I'm not mistaken.
Did he play 0? Okay, I was looking at his PFR page.
Did something in training camp, right?
Yeah, it was the neck. He had a neck problem.
Okay. Weird. PFR, Pro Football Reference has him for 38 snaps last year. Tavon Young.
Yeah, it was preseason before the season started.
Yeah. So, again, I don't know that I can actually trust Tavon Young coming back from 2 years of having missed football. Now, like Ace said, he was a fantastic player. So if he does come back, well, the rich get richer in Baltimore, and they just have, by the way, a fourth corner who is one of the best at his position. And then I do actually like Anthony Averett, one of the players that, kind of their fifth corner on this team. So they just, this is, like I said, this is the best unit, not just in the division, but this is the best unit in football.
Okay. Cute.
Yeah, it's going to be Baltimore. I think they're going to get the clean sweep for this one. They deserve the clean sweep. A couple of years ago, I remember saying this was the best secondary in football. Now, I don't know if they're still the best secondary, just because while they're still good at safety, they're not as elite at safety, or at least the play hasn't been as elite as it was in that 2018 year, even though it's still pretty good. No disrespect to Duke Elliott. But, the corner room is really good. I didn't say Dookie Elliott. I said Duke. But
are you talking about Deshaun Elliott, the Joker?
The Joker.
Duke Elliott. No, the Duke. The Duke. He's the Duke.
I like that.
The Duke. Because that nickname actually makes sense. But for the corner room, Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, that pretty much gets you number one. Marlon Humphrey, I've talked about it a ton on this channel. Probably one of the best corners in football right now. Physical guy, big guy, strong guy, quick enough to play inside, fast enough to be on the outside. Doesn't really have anything that can be truly exposed in a way, and is a corner whose play style can age well. So hats off to Marlon Humphreys. Marcus Peters, look, he's risky. He's gonna be Marcus Peters, but that's why you want Marcus Peters as your number 2 corner, right? Because then he can be more successful on some of those hops and take advantage of some of the more predictable route runners out there, and let Marlon handle, the more creative guys out there. So that's all well and good. Look, Tavon Young, if he plays, he's going to be good. Jimmy Smith, he's been solid. This is the really, and even if Tavon Young doesn't play, Shaun Wade might be able to step in there, and with the Ravens' history of being able to develop corners, I wouldn't be surprised if Shaun Wade comes in there and plays solid at that slot corner, and maybe makes Tavon Young expendable at the end of the day, or at least makes him not such a crucial part to that secondary. I think they have good depth there. They have great coaching. They have great players. That's the trifecta when you look at a room. So yeah, they're the number one DB room, probably in the AFC North. Obviously, maybe they're even in the contention in the AFC, and probably in the NFL as well. So they are a ridiculously strong group. They have been that strong for at least, even before they got Marcus Peters, because they traded for him in 18, right?
19.
They were 19? Was that the 14-2 year? because it was in the middle of that season they traded.
Middle of that season. Yep.
Yeah. So since 2019, they've been that strong. And I remember when I went to camp before the 19 season, I thought they were really, really good. So yeah, they are a very good group. They've been that way. That is a credit to them. That's the strength of the Baltimore defense. And that's why it really doesn't matter who they throw out there at edge, right? We talk about that committee working for Baltimore. This is where team dynamics work, because if you have a secondary that good, Matt Judon can get there, or whoever it may be in the committee can work because the secondary has been so solid.
Yeah. So again, before I get my comments here, 300 people, make sure you hit that like. That help us out a lot. Okay. So one thing that we haven't mentioned here is, I have the Ravens rank. Is the Ravens room is also probably in the whole league one of the rooms that gets the most stress, the most, because we blitz so much. They are dependent heavily of not blown assignments, because if you blow them, there's nobody there to cover for you, right? So the Ravens are on constant stress. The defense puts a lot of pressure into them. Marlon Humphrey, 24 years old, all pro already, great player for us. I know we call him the fruit punch in Baltimore because also he has made a habit of those fumbles. I mean, dude has a knack to produce fumbles. And then you got on the other side Peters, and I agree here with Q. When you have Peters as your number 2, I think that is his best place, because now you don't have to, the Ravens sometimes goes and say, okay, Marlon, this dude is the best receiver, go follow him. The idea, and then Jimmy Smith is there basically for rotation. This guy needs a break, put him in. That is in the idea. If Taylor Young is there, healthy, that's what you want, because Marlon Humphrey, I know what Tony said, that it's because of the money, but he got paid already. He got paid like 2 years ago. They extended him. But the idea is Marlon Humphrey is a physical corner that likes to play in the outside. But Peters doesn't like to play in the inside. Jimmy Smith, unless he's playing man against a tight end, he doesn't play inside. So he gets to the fact of, hey, let's kick him inside when we are at those 3 corners. If Tavon Young is there, now you allow the other 2 to be there. Sean Wade, in my opinion, was drafted to be the replacement of Tavon Young. I don't think this year, but probably for next year. Same thing, we drafted another corner, Stevens. They want to see him on the inside, in my opinion, because that allows the outside corners to do their thing. Marlon, Jimmy, and Peters, and even Avery. Avery has to come lead. And I know Ravens fans are hard on this kid. This kid was a 6th-round pick that played his rookie year because of injuries 3 years ago. And Ravens fans remember all the time that he got burned. Yeah, it's a 6th-round pick. You're going to get burned. But he has made strides, especially when he's your 5th corner. I like him a lot. I like him a lot as a 5th corner. The Ravens essentially have 4 corners they can start in different teams, right? And then, again, if Tavon Young can stay healthy, it's a big bonus. And it allows the players to start in the right position. Because even though Marlon is really good at slot, allows him to play where he's best in the outside. Marlon has, in my opinion, difficult with one type of receiver. His Achilles heel is a fast, small guy that he cannot just jam it and just be physical with it. The guy from Seattle, he had issues with the guy from Seattle, Lockett. That's the type of receiver that I think he prefers the bigger dudes. That he can be physical. But with Lockett, I always thought that, he had the issue that Lockett was shifty and fast, and he was smaller, so it was hard for him to put a hand on Lockett. But yeah, Ravens basically said we cannot get good pass rusher. Let's build our secondary and hope they can hold. Essentially, that's been the MO for this Ravens team. Anyway, guys, make sure you give your ranks in the chat. Also, remember, go vote on Twitter so we can see who you guys think is on the best corner room in the AFC North. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we come live, especially as we creeping into the season. Remember, we're going to do more shows. Tony, where they can find you, man?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. You can find me on Locked On Steelers every Tuesday, and you can find me on my YouTube channel, Steeler Country with Tony Serino.
Ace,
You guys can find me at New Stripe City. I saw some Bengals fans saying that they like the shirt. I actually launched newstripecity.com. I have them available in black, white, and orange. Also, just interviewed T. Higgins' mom. It was a pretty dope interview. Be sure to check that out. And then, of course, you can find me here on AFC North Talk, repping the Bengals. So please be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe and notification bell.
Cute.
Yo, you can check me out at youtube.com/Quincy Carrier or on Twitter at KWEN_C. Always love to interact with you guys on there. You can also check me out and join the peace, because this is the most peaceful conversation we're going to have until the end of this series, because we got linebackers, edge rushers, safeties.
Safety one's gonna be great.
Safety and edge rusher and safety and edge rusher are going to be.
I don't think edge rusher and linebacker is going to be.
We're
At
gonna
least
have some,
from my end, I can say that.
we're gonna have some spirited debates. Hopefully, we
Yes,
all
we
keep
are.
our shirts on.
Yes, we are.
And we're all good to go. Sonny, don't pull that chain out. Well, you can if you if you dare. The chain's in the Latrobe Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so yeah. You can
I'm
follow
a big fan
me.
of that chain. I'm a big fan of that chain. Sonny, send me that chain. Just send it this way. I like it.
Burn it.
I'll put it back here with next to Bond's jersey.
Nah, I'm gonna burn it this year. Anyway, you can follow me SCG Sports everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, IG, SCG Sports. And again, guys, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and follow us on Twitter, because we are coming with more stuff in the near future. We're brewing some things, so make sure you follow us. Also, don't forget, like and comment this video. Give us your ranking 1 through 4. What is your ranking? We love to hear, guys. I know sometimes we don't comment back on the comment section, but we are reading it, and I get a kicker of some of them, and we all read it. So make sure you follow us. Thank you for joining us as always, and we will see you next Tuesday. Peace out.
Have you ever
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
and the ball is